Pile on a Midwest College Football podcast, joined as always by Clinton Boring. My name is Ryan Satkoviak, and joining the pantheon of recurring guest stars on this show tonight, we have Jack Soble joining us once again from Blue and Gold Illustrated to help us break down the national championship game coming up on Monday between Notre Dame and Ohio State. Jack, not in, well, I guess technically you are on home turf tonight. Jack's in Chicago to fly out to the game
Yeah,
tomorrow, sir. Thanks for making some time for us tonight, sir. How you doing tonight?
absolutely. No, I'm doing great. I'm excited to make yet another bowl trip. The hours are long, the media suites are great, and looking forward to covering the Natty.
Okay, so we've had Sugar Bowl, Rose Bowl. You haven't had the Natty food spread yet, but of those two, which has been the best spread so
He
far?
didn't have the Rose Bowl.
Or I mean, not the Rose Bowl,
Sugar
whatever.
Bowl,
What
Orange Bowl.
Sugar Bowl, Orange Bowl? Yes, whatever. One of those poo.
The best food has been like in terms of just like the media, like the in hotel media food. It was Sugar Bowl by far. Honestly, the Orange Bowl media food was kind of gross at times, but uh, in terms of media hospitality or the media suite, the Orange Bowl killed the Sugar Bowl. The Orange Bowl had like basically a man cave with an open bar.
Oh,
Nice.
Uh,
nice.
and in terms of, I would say equal in terms of media party. At the Sugar Bowl, it was like a second story bar on Bourbon Street,
Oh God.
which was pretty damn great. Uh, and at the Orange Bowl, it was this Mexican restaurant with like all you can eat free chips and guac and margaritas, which was
Oh no.
pretty great.
I wouldn't even make it to the game. I'd just be like, I'm down for the count.
So, Ryan, how do we got to get good enough till we can be credentialed? I know currently
Oh
our
yeah.
favorite podcast, The Solid Verbal, is, and they're super popular, fighting to get media credentialed to get to this national championship. So, we got a long ways to go, but damn, it'd be fun to be there.
We
Yeah.
might have to start buying followers or something. I don't know. That seems kind of
I got sites for that.
it seems kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Clinton, how are you tonight? We haven't talked in a while.
Dude, I'm this week's going slow as hell. And even with a student at work right now, I've thought the day was a day behind this entire week. So tonight I thought it was Wednesday again. I'm like, God, and I know some of it's anticipation for this championship game, but I don't know. I thought the first full week back to work last week would be long, but I feel like this week has been longer. And of course, we're all just itching to get to the game. It wasn't as bad sitting and waiting anticipation wise for the other bowl games as it is the final one, right? Because this means everything. There's nothing beyond it. This is where you make your season essentially stay in history books forever if you win this thing. And the build up to it is just feels like it's taking forever. But I'm good. I'm almost back to 100% as far as health wise, feeling pretty good. So I'm ready for the same. Got my Buckeyes and my Bobcats flag in the viewpoint tonight. I didn't even realize I did that. Bobcats basketball team's on a roll, best in the MAC. So go Bobcats. But I'm good, man. I'm ready to talk this with you. I just realized as you both logged in that I'm the only Ohio State one sitting in here with two Notre Dame people. So we'll see how this goes.
Notre Dame people, in quotation marks. So since we've talked to you last, Jack, Notre Dame has won more playoff slash New Year's Six games 3 times over than they had the previous 30 years combined. What a run it has been. Just from your perspective, what has it been like covering this run, going from a resounding victory in round one against Indiana to breaking the bowl curse against Georgia to that come from behind, holy crap, they actually did it, win against Penn State last week?
I mean, the last two wins have been as gritty and gutsy and resilient as you'll ever see a football team. Like they just keep finding a way, man. It is really incredible to see. And like the most memorable interview I did after the Penn State game was we were talking to Mike Denbrock, and he's emotional. He's like, I don't know whether he's about to laugh or cry, and he's like, man, this team's got some grit. I and whatever happens, whatever the situation, they just always come up with the big play, whether it's RJ Oben's strip sack, and RJ Oben, who had done absolutely nothing as a pass rusher the entire season. He didn't have a quarterback hit, let alone a sack,
Hmm.
until that play, and none of it matters now because he is in Notre Dame history for that play. Jaden Harrison's kickoff return, uh, in the Penn State game, Christian Gray's interception. Before that, Jaden Greathouse snatching 2 pairs of ankles on an improbable touchdown where you're like, okay, Notre Dame just had a colossal mistake. They had a call go against them that I disagreed with. A lot of people disagreed with. I and then they're down by a touchdown, and all of a sudden they just pull out, boom, 2 massive plays to win the game. That's just who this team has been. They're not gonna overmatch teams. They're just gonna fight till the very end, and it's been pretty incredible to see.
I don't remember if I told you this on Sunday when we talked, Clinton. I definitely told this story at work this week. It's not like we're a particularly religious family at all, but my dad has a running joke. I don't remember the first time he told it to me. It might have been after the 2012 game. He said, "God told me that I will not die until Notre Dame wins another national championship." And at the halftime of that Penn State game, he texted me, "Guess I'm living to see 65." Like, I thought they were dead. Like, we've been talking on this show since the Indiana game when Riley Mills went down. This feels like a bridge too far. And then they make it through Georgia. And then you get to the first half of Penn State, and that finally looked like, okay, they're the team that can take advantage of this defensive line without Riley Mills in the middle of it, and with a banged up Howard Cross, and with the defensive ends who are already missing. Well, then you lose 2 more offensive linemen. The quarterback goes down for the last drive of the game, and it's like, okay, this has to be the point where it's too far. And it still isn't with this team. And it's always someone different who's making the play. And like this run for me, like it feels similar but different to that 2012 run. And I don't remember if it was Tim Prister or Pete Sampson who would always tell the story that after Chuck Martin took the job at the head coaching job at Miami of Ohio, he was talking to him one day and asked him about that 2012 team. And he said, "Guys, we were closer to going 3-9 that year than we were going 13-0." And I think that was a comment on one, that they weren't beating Alabama that year, but two, the
Yeah.
luck that they had along the way to beat some pretty god awful teams. And this Notre Dame team, like, it has not been that in the regular season. They've been a legitimately good team throughout the course of the season. They've beaten 3 legitimately good teams in the playoffs to get here. But with the not just the manpower, but the star power that this team has lost, it almost feels, I don't want to say miraculous because I think that's being a little hyperbolic and prisoner of the moment and overdramatic, but it's just remarkable that each game it seems like it's someone new who hasn't made a play this year or hasn't had their moment this year who's now stepping up and having theirs. What's that been like talking to these guys after the game when you guys have a little bit more open access as opposed to like the standard
Yeah.
press conferences and getting a chance to kind of hear those guys talk about that?
It's been pretty incredible because like it's not only like guys stepping up. Like obviously, everyone knows about the back. Everyone knows that they're backups and they're coming in, they're playing well. But like it's guys who like in a lot of at a lot of other college football teams like who'd be gone by now. You had Junior Tuli Halamaka, number 44, the D end who like he was the third string rush end in fall camp and coming into week 1, and then the 2 guys ahead of him get hurt. He sticks with it, and it's not like, by the way, it's not like he's like freshman as a third string. He's a true junior as a third string rush end. He had every reason to leave, like a lot of guys did mid-season and redshirt the year. He didn't, and he had the game of his life against Georgia. You had a couple of offensive linemen, Pat Coogan, the four quarters of FU football guy, who's playing his tail off at center. He was benched in fall camp. You have Rocco Spindler, who's playing on 1 foot right now, 1 ankle, benched in fall camp. It's those guys who are really the incredible stories. And obviously, you have the Leonard Moores, who's suddenly the best cornerback in football, which is wild to even think about. But the real cool stories is like those guys, and you ask them like, why did you stay? Because so many guys, we saw this was the year of the midseason red shirt, and so many guys who did that. And you ask them, like you ask Pat Coogan, why'd you stay? And he's like, man, it's the brotherhood. It's truly buying into everything Marcus Freeman's selling, and it sounds so corny, but it's real here at Notre Dame, and that's a big reason they have survived so much attrition this season, is that the backups have stayed engaged, they've bought in, and when their number is called, they're ready.
And you bring up the backups, and kind of the story of this Notre Dame season is, you guys have already alluded to, surviving injuries and
Yep.
getting to the next game and the next man up mentality. So as we kind of look ahead to this game, the trenches feels like where Notre Dame has been affected a lot. And more specifically in the last game, the offensive line. So do you have any updates or can talk about kind of the health of the offensive line right now and kind of who's in, who's out for anyone that's not been up to date? And what can we kind of expect that 5-man front to look like when they line up on Monday?
Yeah, so Anthony Knapp, the freshman left tackle who stepped in after an injury to after a torn pec to Charles Jagasaw, who was supposed to be the left tackle in fall camp. So Knapp is now out. He suffered a high ankle sprain against against Penn State. You could tell right away, like he was done. Uh, he will be replaced, we believe, by Jagasaw, who after tearing his pec, like the first starting left tackle goes down. The starting left tackle who replaced him goes down and is replaced by the original starting left tackle. Not official. He's listed as an or starter, but like he actually came in at right guard after Spindler, who's the dude who was dealing with the ankle injury himself. He re-aggravated that ankle, and so he went out against Penn State. Stop me if you're having trouble keeping up. Anyone's listening, but like we've had trouble keeping up ourselves. But Jagasaw comes in at right guard, and I tell you what, he was a big reason they were able to get themselves back in that game because he was awesome in clearing some lanes up the middle. I don't think it's a coincidence that Notre Dame really started running the ball better when he came in. Uh, we believe he's going to start at left tackle now, in place of Knapp, and then Spindler is not on the injury report. His was not as bad as Knapp's. Like Spindler is just dealing with a bum ankle. It's not like a high ankle sprain or anything. He's just gutting it out. He's not. The issue with Spindler is that he's not a super mobile guy to begin with, but he's a mauler, and I think they know that they need his power in there against Ohio State's big D tackles, Williams and Hamilton. Uh, that's the five. It's Jagasaw at left tackle, Billy Schroth at left guard, Coogan at center, Spindler at right guard, Emil Wagner, who's been in the whole season, at right tackle. I believe Wagner is the only player who has started every game this season on the offensive line.
So when you look at, and as an Ohio State fan, and we've both covered them all year, Ryan, talking about patchwork O lines, I've seen it with Ohio State firsthand. But now we enter such a late time frame for Notre Dame to have to kind of put these pieces together. What's your kind of concern level for Notre Dame's just general offense, more specifically the offensive line, facing this Ohio State pass rush and defensive line? Ohio State has 16 sacks in 3 playoff games, and most of them have come with rushing 4. And you mentioned Tyleik Williams and Hamilton and how Spindler's mobility may be affected even more to go against Tyleik Williams. But just the run that Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau are on coming off and then facing those tackles, what's kind of the confidence level? How are you feeling about that?
It's tough because you also have to remember that like even before all the injuries, we weren't positive about this offensive line because you had the inexperience coming in. They obviously have more experience now, but you saw how the tackles struggled against Abdul Carter, and in their defense, everyone's going to struggle against Abdul Carter. He is insane. Uh,
Monster.
yeah, he's a freak. But I mean, Tuimoloau and Sawyer are playing really really good football too, and it's a big matchup. It's interesting because you can correct me if I'm wrong, Clinton, but like I think they kind of just line up on the same side the whole game. Like Sawyer's the left end against the right tackle, Tuimoloau is the right end against the left tackle.
They've had
I
some movement, but yes, I
Yeah,
think it's mostly one-sided, but they do move around a little bit.
got
Post Oregon game is when they got a little more creative with those things and trying to move
gotcha.
guys around. I've seen a rare occasion where Sawyer doesn't even line up at the line of scrimmage to start, and then
Yeah,
when he kind of assesses what's going on, he'll walk down to one of the edges or he'll scoot one of the DTs out and he'll kind of sit interior. So,
yeah.
but I would say yes, mostly they're kind of on one side.
Yeah, so like for the most part, like obviously they're creative, but for the most part, I'm thinking Wagner against Sawyer, and Jagasaw against Tuimoloau, and those I mean those are the big matchups. If they can hold up, and you look at Riley Leonard's PFF numbers, he is like every quarterback is really good when kept clean and not really good against pressure. The interesting part about Leonard is that his splits against the blitz and not against the blitz are almost as stark. Like he is much better when blitzed than when not blitzed. So like with Leonard, it's like if you blitz, you better get there. But if you can get pressure with your front four, he really can't beat you with his arm. So that's a huge thing to I I don't know how they're going to hold up. Like they basically just hung on by a thread against Carter, and then against like Texas A&M, they held up a lot better than I thought they would. So we'll see. You really just never know.
I think there's obviously a lot that's going to be made heading into this game about the Notre Dame defense against the Ohio State offense, and what do you do to shut down this passing attack, and specifically the freshman phenom Jeremiah Smith? And we've seen some teams recently have success with it. We've seen some teams recently not have success with it. And it seems, at least the common theme that has been talked about is more zone, more kind of shell coverage over Jeremiah Smith seems to be better, which is not necessarily what the Irish have done this year. It's been more so just kind of, go out there, trust your guys in man, hold up, win the day.
Yeah.
And at least listening to Leonard Moore talk the other day, that sounds like what they're going to do again, but I also don't imagine that they gave Leonard Moore license to go out there and say, hey, give up the game plan or anything like that. Do you get a sense that they're going to try to mix zone a little bit more and do something similar to what Texas, Michigan did somewhat successfully against Ohio State? Or is it going to be more so, hey, we gotta dance with the gal that we brought to the dance here type of situation?
I suspect it will be a mix of the two. I think like it's the dilemma everyone's talking about, right, for a reason, right? Like Notre Dame has gotten here by blitzing, playing man, and trusting your really good cornerbacks, and Ohio State has gotten here by shredding that type of defense. Uh, so I think they have to mix it up and keep Will Howard honest. I I think they help on Smith more than anyone else because I think Texas had a lot of success. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Texas had a lot of success saying like, "All right, you are not beating us. Anyone else, you
Mm-hmm.
can have your one-on-one matchup," uh, which is why I think it's a huge game for Jordan Clark, the nickelback,
Mm-hmm.
because I think he's going to be one-on-one on a Buka a lot. I think they help on Smith and leave Clark on a Buka. And the past 2 years they've played against Marvin Harrison Jr., it's been a Buka who's really beaten them.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the matchup that I'm looking for. But I think Al Golden's smart and he'll know when to pick his spots to play man. But you absolutely have to. You can't be exactly what you've been all season because Ohio State's going to destroy that.
Well, I think an underrated thing about this matchup too that I was just like walking into work today and I thought about this and I remember I think and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Jack, if you remember the snap counts off the top of your head. I think Jordan Clark played his fewest snaps of the season against Penn State. It seemed like
Yes.
Penn State was getting Notre Dame lining up into a lot more of a base 4-3 as opposed to that nickel package, which nickel tends to be more their base than the 4-3. And really the only, and it's not like I paid attention to this super closely throughout the year, but really the only other time I remember this being brought up was NIU. And a lot of the success NIU was having in that game was because they were getting Notre Dame in 4-3, and they were not as good in that because at that time the linebackers were not experienced and they were not trusting their eyes well. They were able to get fooled by motion a little bit. So I think that's an underrated part of this game too. Is okay. Well, why was Penn State having so much success against Notre Dame? Okay, maybe it was a little bit to do with the 4-3, but now they're going to be back in that nickel a little bit more since Ohio State's more of a three wide base offense formation.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think that is another part of like what a team does well versus what is worse, what works best against the opponent. Because like, yes, Notre Dame has gotten hurt on defense most, like in the NIU game and in the first half against Penn State when you run 12 personnel, get Jordan Clark on the field, get another inexperienced linebacker on the field, see if you can't get the edge against defensive ends who are either inexperienced in Bryce Young or not the fleetest of foot in RJ Oben. And yeah, obviously Ohio State's not just going to run 12 personnel a game because that's not what they do. So it's going to be. I wouldn't expect Ohio State to really try to exploit that. I think Ohio State bets Notre Dame, plays more man, and tries to beat them that way. Play your own game. But I think that is a good point.
And one would kind of hope if Ohio State notices that uptick in zone and then trying to shade to Smith, that they would learn a little bit from last week when Texas did it so well. Excuse me. But the other point being 2 points kind of here. They need to utilize Smith with some motion to move him around, where the offense felt a little bit stagnant in regards to moving him. Ohio State multiple times this year put Smith on like a jet sweep, and he would score on those plays or have big gains. And you did not see that against Texas. It kind of came down when Howard threw his one pick, what looked like almost a forced pass, and then listening to some people who were at the game, that play was open initially. The linebacker just made a phenomenal interception. Then my other piece was I think so many people were so focused on Smith and then even to an extent Igbuka. Let's not forget about Carnell Tate, but Travion Henderson in all 3 playoff games has had explosive game-changing plays in every single one of them. Whether it be run or via the pass or via the screen, which Texas is still probably crying about letting that happen. But where can Notre Dame or how can Notre Dame kind of defend Henderson out of that backfield if they're so focused on Smith and Igbuka and shutting them down? Because it feels like, not that Notre Dame doesn't have weapons, but it feels like Ohio State has so many in so many places. So the vibe I've gotten from some Notre Dame fans is that we're just going to shut them all down. How's that possible? And if you're going to dedicate so much to the receivers, who are you going to have left to stop Henderson?
It's called witchcraft, Clinton. Look it up.
It's called Al Golden Wizardry, I guess.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it's you know what, your defense has gotten you here if you're Notre Dame, and you trust your defense to figure something out. I think a big key against the running backs, and I think this is a big key for Ohio State too. Once we get to Notre Dame's offense, Notre Dame has really good safeties who tackle, and you really need that against against a team like Ohio State, where you need the safeties to, if to some extent, play the pass first, but then they really need to come down hard and run support. And I think Notre Dame has that in Xavier Watts, who everyone knows, and Don Schuler, who not as many people knows, but nobody's had a phenomenal year. So the safeties are big. Athletic linebackers is big. They've been good. Last year it was a problem where they were letting 10-yard runs become 40-yard runs, 40, excuse me. It's not as much of a problem this year since like NIU, but yeah, you obviously have to account for Henderson and Judkins wherever they are. It's just that's what makes this, as you know, Clinton, like that's what makes this Ohio State team so incredibly hard to stop, because they can beat you in so many ways.
And then kind of my last point before I could flip over to the offense is the D line. We talked about it. Is the depth a concern in the fact that I'm assuming this is a 4-quarter game? I'm not one of the Ohio State people who think this is Georgia TCU from 2 years ago. I think Notre Dame's going to give them a 4-quarter game. With the depth on the D line being lessened than what we would like, can they last through another 4-quarter battle? That would be 3 straight in which they've got to go 4 quarters. We saw Ohio State when they get to the 4th quarter late, even though they've struggled with the run at times when they had to, they put Penn State on skates and pushed them backwards. Can Notre Dame get through another tight 4th quarter battle when it's the 3rd straight one?
Well, I thought they couldn't when Mills went out, and I switched my prediction for Georgia from Notre Dame to Georgia. I was wrong about that. I thought at halftime in the Penn State game, I was like, all right, this is where the D-line injuries finally catch up to them. Was wrong about that. So even though all logic dictates that, yes, this is very much when it's going to catch up to them. I mean, these guys somehow just find a way, and like you lose. So the injuries affect the pass rush much more than they affect the run defense, because Mills has always been a better pass rusher than he's been a run defender, and his replacement Gabe Rubio is a better run defender than he's a pass rusher. So I think the run defense can hold up as well as the edge rushers make it. I think something teams have exploited all year is that the field ends are not the best at defending the run. So like you see a lot of teams kind of run a toss play to the field where they'll hesitate a little bit, try to draw the D end in and toss it out there. And Notre Dame kind of caught on later in the season, and guys like Watts started coming downhill really quickly to shut that down. You saw that against Indiana, but it's certainly something Ohio State can take advantage of. And yeah, you're right. Like if you can find a way to batter this team for 4 quarters, I mean, yeah, you can outlast this defensive line. But they've just proven it's so much tougher than you think it is, just because I can't find any explanation for it but their power of will.
You think that too, like you're in the national championship, right? So it's win or go home. So you put the I'm tired, I'm fatigued, I'm beat up behind you, and I need to make this one last play. And you just run that again until the clock strikes zeros across the board and see what the end result is.
Yeah, I mean, you got a guy like the only, like I say, 3 of their 4 best pass rushers are out. The guy left is Howard Cross, and he's got a bum ankle. He's nowhere near as explosive as we've seen him in the past right now. But he's just gonna gut it. He's just gonna gut it out because he has to, and that's kind of the situation here.
What did they say in the Waterboy, Clinton? Last game of the year, can't hold anything back.
I thought you were just going to say, or my mom said.
Mommy said the alligator to ornery because they got the. Maybe it's a good conversation transition to the offense. What do you make of the coordinator matchup in this game? Because I think we have four of the cagiest, wiliest, most veteran, batshit crazy coordinators in college football in this game, and I don't know. It's just one of those where you could point to some games. It's like, okay, this team definitely has the coordinator matchup here. I don't know who has the coordinator advantage because all of these guys are mad scientists in their own way.
Yeah, I think you said it best. That's one of the most fascinating parts of this game is the chess match between Al Golden and Chip Kelly, the chess match between Mike Denbrock and Jim Knowles. I think speaking from the Notre Dame side, because I'm obviously a lot more familiar with those guys. Golden's best strength, in my opinion, is that he will not let your best player beat you. I think in the Penn State game, yes, Tyler Warren got his. He had 7 catches for 74 yards, but none of those felt like a backbreaker, right? They just kind of felt like empty yards. Whereas the running backs was what really could beat Notre Dame, and in the second half he adjusted to stop that. So I look for him to take away Jeremiah Smith like that, like I was saying before. On the offensive end, Denbrock has been very good, particularly since NIU when he was not very good at this, and obviously his players let him down. But I think against NIU, a big problem was that Denbrock didn't realize until it was too late that his quarterback didn't have it. He is good at whoever enters the game, whoever has the hot hand. Like this past game is oh, Aeneas Williams is feeling really good right now. Let's go back to him. Or Jaden Greathouse is feeling really good right now. Let's go back to him. Or a couple games ago, it was oh, Jordan Faison is really quick right now. He's finding some spots. Let's go back to him a few more times. I think that's Denbrock's biggest strength, and it makes Notre Dame harder to defend because it could be someone different every game.
Mm-hmm. What do you think they were able to glean from that second half against Penn State? Because I mean, we all saw it. The first half was not great. They were not moving the ball particularly well, but it seemed like it almost felt like the first half it felt like they were being really cautious with Love in his knee. In the second half, it felt like they went in at halftime and they were like, all right, well, if we don't do something here, we're cooked. So let's just throw this guy out there and see what happens. But it feels like they felt a little. It feels like they found a little bit more in the pass game as well, particularly with the game that Greathouse had, because it wasn't just the wide open catch. He made a couple of big catches in contested situations too.
Yeah, so it was the 3rd and 9 for Greathouse when he ran that slot fade, and he and Leonard were very much on the same page. Hit him on the back shoulder. I'm like, oh, that is not the kind of play Notre Dame converts against an opponent of this caliber, because they've just been so unable to do anything between the offensive line struggling in pass pro, Leonard not being great throwing downfield, receivers aren't getting open on obvious passing situations, and that's oh, Greathouse really has it tonight, and he and Leonard are really on the same page. And that's when you kind of knew that something big would happen. So yeah, I think they found something. I was reading Bruce Feldman's what opposing coaches said about Notre Dame earlier today, and one of the quotes that stood out was some DC who played Notre Dame late in the season, or maybe it was early in the playoff, was yeah, the slot fade is the only deep route Leonard can hit consistently. We in Greathouse, their slot fade guy, we knew that for some reason Penn State didn't. So I think if you're Ohio State, that's top of mind on the list for things to take away. Uh, if you're Notre Dame, I look at the success that Jadon Blue had on those wheel routes against Ohio State's linebackers, and you circle Aeneas Williams' name again. If y'all listeners, if you're not familiar with Aeneas Williams by now, he is really really good, and he's been a huge piece of this playoff run. I think he's going to be a huge piece this game for multiple reasons too.
Well, Jim Knowles. Well, the first time I think Sonny Styles got caught up in a little bit of the crossing action there, but the second time he'd sent an aggressive blitz and just chose not to cover the running back. That's what he was in his post-game presser. He said, "That's my fault. I should have changed what I did. I wanted to stay aggressive," and they scored. So, dear God, if they get roasted on 2 of those again in this game, all Ohio State fans are going to have a stroke, because this is circa back to the Oregon game in 2021, I believe it was, when Kerry Coombs and his defense couldn't figure out the same play that Oregon scored on 4 times in a row when they beat them in the shoe. So I would assume they may approach that a little bit differently. One of the biggest things I have confidence in Notre Dame in this is Riley Leonard in short yardage. If it's 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1, or if we get to 4th down, 4th and 1, 4th and 2, and they're close enough to plus territory, if not in plus territory, that his quarterback power, his ability to run the ball can make the play that changes the game. Ohio State, it sounds like, without just speculation from their beat writers, Cody Simon will most likely be shadowing Riley Leonard for this game. If not, maybe Caleb Downs. If Ohio State is able to control or limit what Leonard can do in those plays, where does Notre Dame kind of turn to? Is it a short, quick pass, something to the outside? Do they then screen Jeremiah Love or Williams or even Price out of the backfield? And has Notre Dame? I've tried to keep up on my Notre Dame football this year. Has Notre Dame even really had a problem to face like that this year, with as successful as Riley Leonard has been in those situations?
A non-factor was when he was hurt in the second half against NIU. And that was obviously nothing NIU did. That was Leonard is hurt. And so since then, like we knew going in to the Georgia game that Georgia's weakness was the quarterback run, and they were going to run Leonard a ton. Penn State, Leonard is obviously huge in short yardage, and like I truly think if Ohio State can truly shut down the Leonard running game and make it a non-factor, Notre Dame is screwed. I really I don't see with how much speed Ohio State has on this defense. Like if they can really shut down Leonard's running game, I don't know what they can turn to consistently, because that's been like aside from Love, like that's been the only consistent thing Notre Dame has had this season. That being said, like shutting down Leonard is easier said than done, because like they have so many different ways to use him. They don't run him on like on every play, so there's some like obvious QB run as obvious formations, but it's a little harder to predict when it was coming than earlier this season, I think. So yeah, I think that's a great question. Like, and for what it's worth, if I were Ohio State, this would be Cody Simon's job, because you need a bigger dude to do this. Because Leonard, if you like Caleb Downs will get him a few times, but Leonard will also get Caleb Downs a few times because he's just big, he's tough to tackle. So I would use Cody Simon for this job. This is, I have like a 3 matchups to watch article coming out. Leonard against Cody Simon is very much one of them, because if Cody Simon can really shut down Leonard, I think Notre Dame's chances of winning go way down.
It'd be very interesting, and I don't know if anybody wants to see this. And Ryan and I talked about before we got to the playoffs, if this game somehow goes to 3 overtimes and beyond, I think a heavy advantage flips to Notre Dame because of Riley Leonard's running ability. I don't want to see that. I'd prefer to see this game end in regulation or at least the first overtime. But if that gets to that point, I think the favorite switches to Notre Dame. But I'm also intrigued by Ohio State has, I believe, the best red zone defense in the country, most notably the best like inside the 5 rush defense in the country. And I would assume Notre Dame inside the 5 would want to utilize Riley Leonard, but do they do something, we want to call it creative, maybe silly, that Texas did and run a nice toss play and lose 8 yards? Or are they just going to truck Leonard up the middle right off the tackle, go with Jeremiah Love, and go into the strength of the Ohio State defense in those situations?
Your strength, which is obviously the strength of the Ohio State defense. Again, this matchup is so fascinating because it's strength on strength in so many ways. This is another one of them. Notre Dame has been excellent at the goal line because of Leonard and Love. So you go to that first, but so I think back to the Army game when Notre Dame kind of struggled in short yardage because Army was just throwing everything it possibly could at the run game. And Denbrock said that week, like, yeah, that was my bad. I didn't go to my counter soon enough. If we got down to the goal line again, I would have gone to those counters. But they didn't. They just got a couple long touchdowns. So I think you start out by going to your bread and butter, but if that's not working, I think you go to those counters pretty quickly, because like you have to try different things against Ohio State defense, because they're going to stop what you do best.
You heard it here first. Notre Dame's keys to the game: just get long touchdowns.
Yeah.
I am in favor of this.
The bottom third of the country in explosive offense, by the way, to get those long touchdowns. So
And mostly it's just been Jeremiah Love against a bunch
Yeah.
of guys who aren't faster than him.
Yeah, pretty much. Glenn, if this game goes to 3 overtimes, we will not have a podcast anymore because I will drop dead of a heart attack.
Well, I certainly don't want it to because I don't want to be up till 2 in the morning and have to be at work at 7.
Brother,
the next
there's a
day.
0% chance that I'm sleeping after this game, regardless. Unless Notre Dame loses by 50 and I turn it off at halftime, there's no chance I'm sleeping that night. It's just can't do it. Can't do it. I'm going to be wired.
Jack, I've been pondering this question for the past few days. And it's about the different position groups, and I saw people rating them online, like who's got the better quarterback, yada yada yada. What is the position group that can flip this game for Notre Dame? I have my answer, but I wanted to get yours first.
That's a good
Good
question.
question. I really think it's the safeties. I think like a Xavier Watts interception and a Don Schuler forced fumble like you saw against Georgia, like that's the thing. And like I think part of it is just the Texas linebacker made an incredible play, but Watts can make incredible plays too. And I think that's a big reason why they should go to some zone, because like you need to bait Will Howard into some mistakes, because like, well, I think Will Howard is an excellent quarterback. You can't deny that. Like he's susceptible
Mhm.
to be kind of baited like that.
Yep.
So I look at the safeties. I'm curious what your answer is.
My answer is special teams. Because of the big play factor that Notre Dame has had
That's
in
like
these
an
games.
entire phase of the game.
Well, I'm more so thinking about like your kick return or your punt returns. See the Georgia game, right? You guys had the game-changing play right before half that might have swung the game your way, but then you come out in the second half and you have the kick return TD that pretty much iced the game. So when I look at something like Ohio State, to me, has the advantage in a lot of the position groups. They have the $20 million roster, whatever people want to spew out there, the talent advantage, yada, yada, yada. Where I think Notre Dame has a discrete advantage is special teams. I've watched Ohio State for what feels like, God, since Jim Tressel, not have elite special teams, especially in the years under Ryan Day. And they were supposed to fix that this year. Their punter here recently has been able to drop bombs inside the 10-yard line. So thank God we figured that out. But the weakness of this team that we've seen numerous times this year is errors on special teams. To me, with Notre Dame's return ability, it doesn't even have to be a touchdown. If you guys get a kickoff return or a punt return and get it across the 50 or down to your 10-yard line, that shortens the field, which then limits how far you have to go against this defense. If Ohio State is going to punt based off Notre Dame stops, what they did a lot with Texas was they pinned them deep. And then Texas couldn't drive the field to score on them. Now, they got one in the second half and the second time they scored. But if Notre Dame has to drive 80, 70, 65 yards every time, that is not going to favor them winning this game. Now, the reason they could do it is if they control the clock and Ohio State's offense isn't on the field. But I feel like I'm looking at, can Notre Dame somehow find that luck of the Irish and break that big special teams return again that could kind of flip this game if it's close. If we're heading into the fourth quarter and you guys take one down to the 10-yard line, that's a big problem for Ohio State.
Yeah, you mentioned the return game. Like what I think about when I think Notre Dame special teams is like the trick plays and all the
those as well.
About like triple overtime, that kind of stuff. It made me think of something that's relevant to this conversation. This is how well prepared and well thought out like these fakes are. You guys have all seen the run them off the field, fake punt against Georgia. That was to get Kirby Smart to burn a timeout, because they saw in film that like in the many overtime game against Georgia Tech how timeout happy he was in those kind of situations. They were like, let's panic Kirby Smart and make him use a timeout, his second timeout in a 2-score game with 7 minutes left. Like that is how well prepared and how well thought out this coaching staff is, like when it comes to these kind of fakes. And that's, I say this because like they're gonna have something up their sleeve. Like they're well aware that they're the underdogs. They're not dumb. They know Ohio State has more talent. They're gonna find some kind of way. This is an aggressive coaching staff. They're not gonna be Kurt Signetti sitting on his hands and punting on
Jesus.
talent disadvantage. Like they're gonna be finding every way they can to win. And you're absolutely right, Clinton. That's gonna be special teams trying to find some little edge there.
Hey, Kurt Signetti said it best. Google me. I punt.
I punt. down by two scores with
What a blasphemy.
7 minutes left.
I will tell you, part of this enjoyment of this national championship, one, that we're keeping it in the Midwest, regardless of which team wins, and it's the teams we cover in our podcast. But there's no SEC team in the national championship for the second straight year,
Here
which
you go,
is
Clinton. Here you
absolutely
go.
glorious.
A comment just for you.
Hey, thank you, Lester. We appreciate it. Whoever wins, the Midwest wins. No more playing amateurs against semi-pros. Yes, so the Midwest, as we say on here, the Midwest does it best. So the SEC can have their just means more. But it feels great to just watch these two giants do battle. I know there's been a lot of talk, too, of especially how last Thursday and Friday's games kind of drew ratings versus compared to New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, when people were actually home and not having to work so much the next day. I expect this national championship to draw really well. I think there are a ton of Ohio State and Notre Dame alumni everywhere to be able to draw viewers from not just the U.S., but probably other countries. I think there's enough people out there who hate both Ohio State and Notre Dame to put interest into this game. Probably more Ohio State than anyone, but I know there's a lot of hate for the Irish out there too. And so then there's also the SEC, who's been complaining that thanks for making the 12-team playoff. You have a team who lost to NIU and a team who couldn't beat Michigan and lost their second game in the national championship. Well, I'm sorry that you're jealous that we eliminated your SEC teams on the way to this national championship, but sit there and cry some more.
Well, I think that's the great thing about the 12-team playoff, right? It's that like one bad loss doesn't kill you, and I think these two teams epitomize that.
Absolutely.
Heading into this game, Jack, we've talked about, position groups or areas of the game that can swing the thing for Notre Dame. What has to go right in this game? Same question I asked you before Indiana. For Notre Dame to come out victorious on Monday. Jesus Christ. Thank God this game's not tomorrow. Good Lord, I would have an aneurysm.
Don't matter anymore. I'm just concerned. But I think what needs to happen is Notre Dame needs to play this game on their terms. Mm-hmm. And by that, I mean, like, turn it into a grinded out, stuck in the mud slugfest. And how they're going to do that, I have no idea. That's why Mike Denbrock, Al Gold, Marcus Freeman all get paid more than I do. But that's what they got to do. And, like, that's what Michigan was able to do. To some extent, that's what Texas was able to do. They just didn't make the... There's a big Texas guy who was at the Cotton Bowl. And like something he wrote about after the game was like, Texas had a chance to win that game. Ohio State just made the plays at the end. Mm-hmm. Notre Dame has made the plays at the end all season. If they play 54 minutes like Texas played, they'll have a shot in this game. And I think that's kind of what they need to turn this game into.
Listen, did he text you a string of expletives after that toss sweep on second down?
He was not thrilled.
Well, and if you're a Notre Dame fan looking for a reason to feel confident in this game, like these teams have played 3 years in a row. Mm-hmm. In the last 2 years, that's what Notre Dame has done. They have turned this into an ugly, disgusting affront to football by slowing the game down and making it a low-scoring game. So maybe third time's the charm. Maybe this is the one where they put 11 guys on the field at the end to get the goal line stop at the end.
I mean, doesn't that play just kind of show you like how far Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame have come in the past year and a half?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The teams playing against them are making those mistakes because Notre Dame has just been playing such a clean game throughout the playoffs, like in the fourth quarter, that they're closing teams out and they're making the plays.
So all I have to say to the Notre Dame faithful, as a Cincinnati Bengals fan, enjoy your last game with Al Golden as your DC because he's about to be the Bengals' new defensive coordinator.
Yeah,
that's what you think.
He's coming home, baby. He's coming home.
That's what you think.
I'm telling you. Bengals' faith doesn't lie. I would be more than happy to have Al Gordon. I want Al Golden back. When they fired Lou Anarumo, that was the first name I wanted. I said, I want Al Golden back. And apparently the Patrick Graham from the Raiders is in on this too. He's a great D-line expert. I wouldn't be opposed to that either. Not Rams, Raiders. But I want Al Golden back. Bring him back to the Queen City. Please.
Always got to make it about you, Clinton. Always got to make it about you.
You know what, Ryan? When I have to watch Joe Burrow have an MVP caliber season not make the playoffs because my defense sucks ass, I would really like my team to have a defense.
Oh, brother.
We can draft Xavier Watts and put him at safety too and just keep him right on there.
Yeah, there you go. Keep it in the family. All right, Jack, we've taken up enough of your time, sir. Thank you once again for joining us this evening. It's been a blast. I hope you have so much fun at the game. I've heard the media hospitality before the national championship is next level. Don't get lost.
Yeah, man, have a blast with it. Enjoy it. Good luck to Notre Dame. I obviously hope my team comes out on the other side with a win, but I hope you guys enjoy the hell out of that game.
Have me, and yeah, I really appreciate it. And good luck to both of your teams as an impartial observer. I'm just looking forward to a great game.
From your mouth to God's ears. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us again tonight. We'll be back on Sunday with our official pick'em for the game, and Clinton and I will probably yell at each other a little bit. 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll see y'all then. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend. Stay warm. It's going to be cold.
See you.
Maybe it'll be cold. Probably not cold in Atlanta.
It's supposed to be cold in Atlanta.